You're going to learn a lot about painting and perspective, and you're going to meet Shelby Keefe today. Shelby, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we were just talking about you the other night on the Plein Salon Awards, or maybe I was talking to somebody about you, but it was really interesting to see when you won the Plein Salon. What year was that? About
2013, I think.
2013.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to see what happened with your career nationally after that.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been such great exposure, and you can't get something like that easily. So what a blessing.
Yeah, well, you deserve it, that's for sure. And your work
Thanks.
is just stunning.
Thank
So, Shelby, what are you going to do for us today?
Well, I thought it might be a good thing to do is to share a little bit about my knowledge with architecture and perhaps talk a little bit. Whoops.
Perspective changes everything.
If that's a little clue for you, sometimes that helps your skills in doing architecture is to know where you are, how that relates to any given point of where you're standing, where you're photographing, if you're plein air painting, if you're working from a photo. Perspective is a pretty good thing to know about.
And often misunderstood. So we'll be anxious to get into that and really learn more about it. Now, tell me just briefly, without spoiling anything, tell me what's this colorful mess behind you on the easel?
It's a colorful mess. I like to get rid of the white on a canvas, and more lately, the more color on it, the better. And it doesn't have a whole lot of logic to it these days, but generally my underpainting is the complementary color of what the main color is going to end up being. So
Okay.
I've just pre underpainted here so that I didn't have to take any of your time doing that. So I'm prepped and ready for a little demo for you.
Okay, I'm going to show you guys a couple of Shelby's paintings in case you haven't seen her work. She does a lot of architecture work. She also does figures. This one is awesome. I love that. That looks like a road around Route 66 or something.
It is. It
Is
is.
it?
I'm waiting with bated breath to share some tips and tricks for you.
All right. Well, I'm going to just put you on screen and you can go ahead and get started.
All right. Well, I've taught a few classes here and there, and usually the architecture, things with buildings or structure, even vehicles, have this thing that befuddles us, and it's called perspective. What happens when you are standing in front of something off to the side? Doesn't matter where you are, there is this sort of vanishing point, this point of space that all the lines converge to. And it's a simple principle, and your eye can see it, but it almost takes like a training of the eye to actually grasp why the line of a building would be so up and down and slanty, or why a car, when you're looking at it straight on, is so big in the front and then it goes back into a small thing. So perspective, I had architectural drafting in high school, so I learned some really detailed ideas about perspective and how to actually do drafting. So I kind of came from some roots of that, but I sort of put that away. And I look at my subjects and just see it. But I found when I'm teaching that not everybody sees things the same. So if I could give you a few little guidelines on how to see perspective and why it's doing what it's doing, that I might be able to serve you better that way. So what I've done is I've picked four of my photos, and I'll start with this one. This is a photo that I took in Telluride, and you can see the buildings I'm right up underneath those buildings, and the perspective, there's a horizon line right in here, and everything comes from there. I'm going to try to do this and meet somewhere down here. Now, you can trust me on that, or you can look at this that I've come up with here. Yep, there we go. So basically, I've taken the same photo and took a ruler and then showed you how all these converge to this one point here. So we would call this one point perspective. So everything's converging to this one point. And so when you have windows, I take a line and sort of create the tops of the windows, and then the bottoms come up and meet that right there. So you can see how that makes sense. And then this green line I put right here, that is my imaginary horizon line. Now it's not perfect, but it gives you a sense for when you have a photo, you can actually do the same thing. Take a piece of tissue paper over your photo and get a ruler and a marker or a pencil and just draw these lines. And that's going to help your brain see better than just like taking a busy
I
photo.
have a
like
question.
this.
If you'll hold that back up again, I have a question.
Yes.
All right. So I thought that all the lines converge at the horizon line, but it looks like your green horizon line is lower.
Yeah. So of course I had to start with a photo that's on it's Telluride, a mountain town. So the sidewalk, which is the foreground lines that are converging to the horizon, the sidewalk is actually coming up a hill. So I've made it a little bit more, there's almost like two different vanishing points because we're looking down a hill from that sidewalk. So, but the buildings are converging at that point that I've marked.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to be demoing this in my painting. But I'll move on to my next example. Here is a groovy barn in Sedona. And I picked this one out to show you 2-point perspective. I believe it's called that. Because you can see there's a horizon line and then 2 points in which the things converge. So here we go. Whoops, I'm navigating. Here we go. So you see the what I'm talking about 2-point perspective, there's actually 2 vanishing points in here. And so if you have a building like this where the corner of it is sort of in your face and you can see both sides of a building, you can take your tissue paper over your photo and draw, and you'll find how it really works. The vanishing points are really there. Now, sometimes the vanishing points are completely off the page. And that's really okay. You don't need to have a successful anything to if you have an actual vanishing point. You just get an idea of what the angles are when you're trying to draw your painting on your canvas. So this is to tweak your brain. This is to give you basically why the angles are the way they are in your photo or in plein air, because all this stuff is true for plein air too.
I have another question. All right. Wait, hold it up. Hold it up. So you have the side of the building, the edge of the building as the center of your 2-point perspective, but why wouldn't it be at the peak or center of the barn?
The peak is that's a flat plane. This side of the building is actually a flat plane. This is all flat. It just has different shapes. This is where everything starts, where the plane goes off in one direction and then it goes off in the other direction. So it starts at the point that's closest to your face or closest to your body.
Okay, good.
And in a 2-point perspective thing. So I'm going to really blow your mind with this next one. Here's one, which is Cuba. And in this photograph, we have a lot going on. So I decided not to do this as a demo because I would probably drive myself crazy. But in here, we have a vanishing point way behind the car. It's way back there. But the car is part of the perspective as well. Do you see how big it is? It's the thing that's right in front. It's the closest object, and that means I'm kind of basing my lines, my perspective lines off of that and these edges here. So here we go. Oops. Sorry about that, guys. Trying to get you to see this. There. So you can kind of see, I sort of determined the vanish or the horizon as this green line. And it's really not important that you do that, but I wanted to sort of create logic for your brain on some of this stuff, because as the sidewalk goes, I see the sidewalk going to the horizon line, but the buildings are converging on a distant something or other, and the photo isn't that clear, so I couldn't tell what it was. But it doesn't matter, because when you're drawing your painting, you just want to make sure you got your angles working in that idea of converging to that one point. So and then you see how the car is also part of that. I did this line for the car because it's obviously not straight across, but it's also in a way going off to some vanishing point way in that other distance, way over there. So I mean, it's a real trip if you really want to get scientific with it. But I just recommend, as a painter, as somebody who has trouble figuring out an angle when they're drawing it on their canvas, just put that tissue paper over your photo and find those lines. Get a ruler and just trace those edges, and you'll have a better way of seeing, as opposed to looking at a busy.
How do you do it when you're outdoors, painting outdoors?
Oh, that's such a good question. I actually take my paintbrush, and if I see a scene, I mean, I've got my scene in front of me, I'll take a paintbrush. Now, it's going to be hard to do, and I'll actually look at I'll trace let's see, here's something on my screen. Let's pretend this is real life right here. I'll take my paintbrush and hold it at that angle that I am seeing in plein air, and I'll just bring it over to my canvas. And that's how I'm able to do that.
There's a new product that advertised with us called Artist Angle. And it's a little piece of plastic that has, you can basically look at the angle and then carry it over and transfer. It's just another way to do it.
That's a great tool. I would recommend. I need one of those, Eric. That sounds like a really great tool. So anyway, this baby would be really tough, but if you were going to tackle this thing, I would still recommend doing, the tissue paper over it and just doing a tracing. And I'll show you on my computer, I'll show you another trick for simplifying your subject.
So you will, when you're painting outdoors architecture, you're going to do your measurements, and then you're actually going ahead and putting those lines down. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm getting them. I do my drawing pretty much first, and I spend a lot of time on the drawing. So if I am befuddled by an angle because it's from life and it's not flattened in a photograph, then I will hold up my brush as an angle and just bring it over and just sort of sketch it in there at the angle. So I may do the angle like this with my brush, but then I'll quick do it like that, get it in there. So I've got my angle, I'll move it over and okay, get it in there. And then also, and I'll probably share this with you a couple of times today, is you have a building with a roof line here, and then all the windows are down here. You fan it like this. You're actually creating a vanishing point with the end of your brush. By just going like that, you're getting a sense for the 1 point perspective. And that's just another quick way to sort of help train your brain, or I'm not sure if it's the brain or the eye, but I think they're connected somehow. Anyway, I'll talk more about that when I start drawing this thing. I have one more photo for you that deals with a different kind of perspective. I believe it's 1-point perspective, but it's the kind that when you're standing right under a building and you're looking up. And that's exactly what I did on the painting that won the salon. I was standing right below that building and looking up at it. But this one, here's a building that I was standing in front of in Italy, looking up at it. And you can see on my perspective sketch here that the vanishing point is way up in the sky. You see my lines I put in there. So that's just a different way to think about perspective. There is also perspective going, this way too. Like it's, it's still tipping. I'm making you guys probably seasick with all my jumping around here.
Yeah, I was just going to say I need a little Dramamine.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
But you can see how if you can sort of give yourself the time and the effort to basically take a straight edge and follow those edges and see where they go, you're gonna have an easier way of actually drawing things with perspective. And that'll work with anything. It works with cars. Cars are tough, man, because they are soft edges. They're not, angular like buildings. So, but they still have perspective. I did a couple of paintings recently of bee boxes. They're boxes. They got a perspective. They've got a vanishing point. It's perspective is pretty important. And if you want to do things with definite shape, it's good to have knowledge of perspective. And there was another thing I wanted to point out, but I think I'll point it out when I do the demo, that when you're doing, perspective, there are certain things that are straight up and down too. So you've got your vanishing points and you're fanning out, but you also have to make sure that there is a vertical. There's certain verticals that they stay like this. They don't tip unless you've got a distortion you really want. So that is the very abbreviated perspective lesson.
What about figures? I always hear that you want the eyes of the figures to be about the horizon line. Is that right?
The what are the figures?
The head or the eyes of the figure to be at about the horizon line. In other words, if they're closer to you, well, no, that doesn't work. I'm not exactly sure how to do that.
I don't think I could comment with any knowledge on that one.
Somebody will know. Put it in the comments. Somebody will know.
Yeah, that's a new one. I would like to hear about that. So you're talking about figurative work.
Well, if you have somebody walking down that street in front of you, they're going to be taller as they get closer to you.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I guess I rely on my subject or my photograph. And if it's plein air and it's live, well, then you just got to do a really expressive, quick gestural thing of the person. So yeah, I kind of depend on my photo a lot for things like that, and I really look at it and examine where everything's falling, where the conjunctions are, and I'll talk about that too when I get onto the painting. So yeah, so I'm gonna dive down here and get my photo again. I'm still here. There it is. So this is what I'm doing this one, and it's on.
Get that a little closer for us.
Yes, it is on my my computer right behind me, but I don't know if you'll be able to see it that well. But this is that really bizarre thing where it's on a hill. We're actually looking down a hill in here. So
well, let's get started. You got about 25 minutes.
Woohoo! Okay. All right. I'd rather demo anyway than talk. So anyway, I've got this underpainting here that I've started, and I've got a little pile of dark paint already mixed up. Just to show you real quick, here's my palette, all basic colors and then some. So I kind of cheated, and I started just placing where I'm going to go with this, so it wouldn't take me too long. But I'm following. I marked on my canvas with charcoal where my vanishing point is, which is about here, and then I was able to have everything work with that. Now here on my computer is my photo, so I'm not going to hold my.
Do you think you could get your camera any closer to the canvas?
I could try. You bet. My camera, which is my phone. Oops. Is that any better?
Yeah, anything helps. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. All right, so when I was looking at my image here and trying to figure out how to help you see the angles and see lines easier, and when you, because I think drawing is so important when you are painting architectural. To me, drawing is like the first thing to do when you're painting architecture.
I want you guys to notice how Shelby is holding the brush. She's not holding it like a pencil.
Yeah, it's like I'm almost fisting it. But just a quick little suggestion for you. I've got this magic. Another thing I do is I put a piece of tissue paper over my screen, and I do just the outlines of things, and that also helps me see a busy subject matter. So just wanted to show you that. That's another
great idea.
Little trick. I like tricks. No, I don't. Not necessarily. I like tips. Tips are good. Anyway, so I already kind of worked on where this is going, because I did a halfway point. Here's my halfway point. I wanted to see how far that was from the halfway point, and everything is about perspective and where it is in relationship to the other thing. So I find I'm doing a lot of measuring with this. I'm doing a lot of angling, measuring, and plein air as well as from a photo. I just find it's really helpful to put in the time and get your drawing right. Because if you can get your drawing right and you're happy with it, then the whole rest of the painting is just easier. It's just, then you're not correcting. So, and if I was just doing a landscape, maybe I wouldn't have to draw so much. But this is an architecture, and it just takes a little bit more accuracy to pull it off. So I really invest a nice amount of time to get it right. But that's why I did a little charcoal cheater here, so I didn't have to spend the whole time drawing. So when you have that perspective fan like that, you can see how everything's sort of running off and meeting right about there. The verticals need to be pretty straight up and down. It's maybe tipping a little bit, but they really need to be relatively straight up and down, or things will look like they're going to fall over on you. And that's just one of those architectural drafting tips that I learned. And if we had a camera on top, I would do a drawing and show you how that looks from, with a straight edge, and how all that actually comes together in architectural drafting. It makes a lot of sense if you can see it rendered. But I'm just gonna keep plugging away here, get you some demo, some building here. I also believe that you can get away with a lot of inaccuracies the looser you are. So I always say the more you can get away with, the looser you are, the more you can get away with by way of perspective accuracy. Um, it's seriously expressive, and it's more like an expressive impression of a building rather than a rendering of some really, like believable. It can be fun, but to have the basic knowledge, like I shared with you, about why things go at an angle like that, then you can take that basic knowledge and tweak with it. You can go faster and crazy fast and expressive, but still have a decent handle on the perspective, and it'll still be believable. This is a little balcony up here. This photo, I mean, painting it from life is still the best. I really, we could see so much more color, so much more detail, so much more everything when we're painting in plein air. So this photo is a good enough photo, but there's a lot of darks in there and you can't really see what's going on. So I really do miss painting. I haven't been doing a whole lot of plein air. It's kind of sad, but
I thought it was okay to be outdoors.
yeah. It's been fabulous to be outdoors, but for me, I tend to paint plein air mostly when I'm in a painting competition and not when I'm just having fun. So I've missed out on the painting competition activities and stuff like that because of whatever cancellations and all that. But I did actually get out here in Milwaukee for oh my gosh, I am having a real, the OPA, we had a virtual paint out, and that was fun. So I have been painting here in Milwaukee outside, and I never used to do that. I never painted my own hometown. So that's one of those benefits of this whole situation is it's kept me home, and I never painted at home. I've never painted outside at home. Obviously, I paint here in my studio. And right now, I'm just throwing in a little bit of that dark, just to give me like a value study. There's all this wonderful shadowy tree stuff. Back at it. I kind of have a short attention span, and I'm bouncing around a little bit, but I would be answering your questions if I heard you all out there in the audience. But I would be happy to answer questions after the fact if anybody wants to get in touch with me.
Well, maybe what you can do is go into the comments later today, and if people have questions, if I don't get to them, then you can answer some questions in the comments.
I'd love to do that. All right, so now I'm seeing we got some less structured things behind here. We've got some trees here. I'm just gonna sort of put some darks in there. That way some of the buildings will stand out. Got a little mountaintop in here. So I'm using a dark that is consisting of Prussian blue, equal portions of Prussian blue, alizarin crimson, and transparent earth red, which these happen to be gambling colors, and makes a wonderful rich black. I mean, I could just squirt black out of the tube, but this way I can change the balance of the color. It could be more of a red dark, it could be more of a brown dark. So it just gives me that shift that I can choose to have.
Oh, you're doing great. You got another 12 minutes yet.
Oh, I can get this done then. Awesome. All right, got to get that sidewalk in.
No pressure.
No pressure. Whee! I really love those silhouetted figures in there. I wish you could see the screen as good as I could see it. They're just wonderful coming up on the sidewalk. So I'll get those in here. Just looking at them as shapes, not looking at, oh, there's a head, there's a torso, there's a leg, but looking at those. And I'm making them a little bit bigger than they actually show up in the photo. And I don't think that's a problem since we're going to be this is kind of an expressive little painting anyway. But what I really like is how the shadow in the foreground just kind of, they're silhouetted in the shadow, but behind them is that sunshine. And you get that wonderful like striping of the shadow from the trunks of the trees. So we'll get that in there. I love that because it creates horizontals and verticals. Let's see. I want to make sure because and also when you have a source with light and shadow, it gives you some great abstract shapes. So I have to look at this as being, how is this holding together as an abstract painting? And as I move along here and go along, I can play around with to make sure I've got enough lights and darks in there and the shapes feel good. So I don't know if you can see this. This actually has some nice, you can see the abstract quality of what's on my screen.
Pretty hard to see what's on your screen.
Okay, sorry. All right, well, I'll just plot ahead here. Get some going here. This is dark up here. I think there's a lot of source material online for how to learn how to draw with using perspective lessons. So if you want to hear more detailed information about, and want to study up on perspective, you just Google it. I Googled perspective and
yeah, there's some great videos out there on perspective. I failed to mention real quickly, Shelby has a great video out called Painting from Photographs, and you can find it at lilyartvideo.com. Just search Shelby's name, Shelby.
And that is another, there's quite a bit of me teaching you how to see and how to draw, and also how important it is to get that drawing done to your liking before you jump in there with all the paint. I'm close here to jumping in with the paint because I want to be able to show that to you before we get too far along here. All right. So that's what I'll do. Let's see. I like to do the big shapes first. Big, simple shapes first. I see a big sky. So I'm using my white. I've got some manganese blue for tinting the white into a sky blue. Teeny bit of yellow. And I use a medium here. I'm using poppy oil right now because it's very slow drying, but it makes your paint really go on nice, feels nice. And it's goes on smoother than butter. So I do that. Now that's not much to do here. It's pretty much done. So, all right, so I'll move on to the next thing. I think that big side of the building, that pinkish red, is fun. Let's get that going on. I'm using white, throwing my reds in there. I got to throw some yellow in there. I also have to throw in a little bit of the complement because I don't want it to be like an Easter egg pink color. So I'll just throw in a little bit of blue in there. I'm just jumping around and grabbing color that just neutralizes it a teeny bit. And let's see what that looks like. And I like to brush Again, we're talking perspective here. I actually use my brush marks in here to reinforce the direction of the perspective of this building. I don't know if you can see that, what I'm doing. I'm following it, relatively speaking. And creating a nice dance with the sun dapples here too, but all in mind, keeping that in mind, the directional brush work has to do with the perspective of the building too. So I'm richening the color a little bit because I'm seeing on the video that it's not showing the color that I've got. Let me try to richen it up a little bit. So just finding those little, it's like sky holes in trees, but it's actually the holes of the color of the building where the shadow is sun dappling it. So I left, that's why I did a few markings in there. It's like a road map for when I go to paint. So I've got these little markings I put in there as a guideline that I may or may not follow. Nice lighter color up here. Mixing more, and I don't mind not having a big enough pile. I don't pre-mix my color a lot. I mix on the palette as I need it, because if I mix a color and I run out of it, it's okay if it's not exactly the same color. It's actually kind of good to have a few varying versions of the same color. So I mix as I need it.
We're heading to the 5-minute mark.
Okay.
Now, is some of your color showing through? It's hard to tell from the screen.
Yeah.
Some of your undercolor?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Nice energy.
So that's basically how I do it. I do this drawing much like a very freely rendered coloring book. And then I do not stay in the lines, and I let that kind of determine where things are. My line work is important to me because it gives me a place to start and stop my color. So here, I'll just throw in some really nice sunlit here real fast. And I'll just continue like this with the areas that are bright. When I do this underpainting, it allows me to just have a white in there with a little tint of color, and you can see the impact right away. Whereas if I was on a white canvas.
Are you laying on a pure white?
Yeah, I've got some color. It's a little tinted. It's pretty close, almost all white. But I like to add a teeny bit of color in it just so it's not like chalky, just a little bit of color in it. But I can afford to do that in these white areas. And I may have waited later to do this, but for the sake of this demo, I thought you might need a little candy. Everybody needs
yeah, a little candy is nice.
And then there's this candy, some lighter version of the white. I mean, this is such a fun subject with all sorts of light colors that all you have to do is just throw in the light colors and you've already got something working. So like behind the people, I can throw in some of those sidewalk lights. And the way this comes up like an L shape. I love the way sun hits a vertical building or anything like a fence or whatever. You just get that lovely, L shape of light. The L kind of a, okay, my words aren't coming out right. You get it though. And then that same blue for the trim. I'm using the pile that I use in the sky. I'm just taking advantage of that. And I'm gonna throw in some of that here. Maybe you can't tell from the, I'll bring this up close when you want me to stop. I'll bring up some of this.
You got a couple minutes.
Okay. I mean, I'm used to doing fast paintings. I do those 20-minute ones to music. And that's like, hey, if I can do a painting 30 by 30 in 20 minutes, I should be able to do a 16 by 20.
Oh, that's right. You did a 20 by 30 on stage with music that you produced.
Yep.
And cranked it out. It was beautiful.
And isn't that funny when you're in a certain mode? You're like, well, if I did that, why can't I do that when I'm, plein air painting? I need to get this painting done. Why am I so slow? But it's a mindset, right? It's a perspective check. It's all about perspective. I just love that.
Bigger brushes help too.
Bigger brush, indeed.
All right. Why don't we bring this to an end? I'd like you to get your camera and really show us the painting up close before we. Oh man, yeah, we can see it so much better now.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So if you would be willing to post that in the comments when we're all done, that would be really terrific.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll definitely do that.
Well, I want to remind everybody that Shelby has a video with us. It's called Painting from Photographs. It's one of our best sellers, and it is actually, you know, when you're painting from photographs, you're seeing things differently because photos lie. And this really tells you how to overcome that. And of course, a lot more than what we saw today. So you can get that at lilyartvideo.com and just look for Shelby's name, Shelby. All right, Shelby, thank you so much for this.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me come on the camera with y'all. And
all right.
Keep on painting and keep on staying positive.
All right. We'll see you. Hopefully see you in Denver.
You sure will.